Hello, Stack. Nice to see all of you here. It's good to be in person, talk about DevOps together, specifically continuous delivery. So, quick intro about myself. I'm a product architect for a company called CloudCover. We're a cloud-native digital solutions company based primarily here in Singapore. I'm based in Canada, but I'm moving back to Singapore come February, so super excited about that. My primary focus is on building platforms for DevOps and developers. And specifically, the product I work on is called Code Pipes, but I'm not here to talk about Code Pipes. I'm here to talk about continuous delivery. So let's start at the top. What is continuous delivery? Fundamentally, it's the software practice of breaking down your application into manageable chunks so you can continuously be making changes to it. Thus, you're able to make your application highly available, secure, resilient. You're able to automate the entire software delivery process. Fundamentally, that's the goal. You want to be able to ship your product to your customers and your end users faster and more reliably. That's why you're interested in continuous delivery. Now, why does it matter specifically? I mean, and how do I measure continuous delivery? Can I see a raise of hands? Who's heard of DORA? Raise your hands if you've heard of DORA. Oh, wow. Okay. This is great. So DORA stands for DevOps Research and Assessment. It's an ongoing research study. Fundamentally, the 4 DevOps metrics are, as you can see here, and I'm sorry if this is a bit small for the folks in the back. The first one is deployment frequency. How often do you deploy your code into production? The second one is the lead time for your changes. How often are you able to actually push changes from the code that's committed in Git all the way into production? The last 2 specifically are around availability, such as time to restore service. So if your app goes down, how long does it take you to bring that app back up? And the change failure rate is, if you actually do a deployment and it breaks, how quickly are you able to go and actually fix that? Now, there's 4 columns here, and I want you to look at these 4 columns and ask yourself where you fit within these 4 columns. And if you don't find yourself in that elite column, there is work to be done, fundamentally. For you to call your engineering practice excellent, you should not be nervous about deploying on a Friday at 5 o'clock, right? Who's nervous about deploying at Friday on a 5 right now? Okay, there we go. There's work to be done, but keep listening. So, who are the elite performers? If I go back to this, in that elite column, who are these elite performers? These are some of the logos of companies that effectively began that digital transformation journey a number of years ago, and today they stand as like the pioneers in front of us who say, this is how we do it at scale. And you might have seen some open source projects come out of some of these groups, but fundamentally, although these are not software businesses, at the core, they are. Their ability to push software, to control their company, is contingent on their success. And as we continue to propel ourselves into the future, your ability as a practitioner of this craft is also contingent on the company's success. Your ability to make your engineering team in that excellent category is contingent on your personal success and your company's success. So, automation lies at the center of all of these activities. The more we automate, the less cognitive load that we have as developers, right? Now, what does automation truly mean? This is where the power of the pipeline comes in. Pipelines for integration, pipelines for testing, pipelines for deployment, pipelines for everything. Pipelines are the primordial automation unit within your CICD setup. The tooling you choose is entirely up to you. I'm not here to say use Jenkins, use Azure DevOps, use GitLab. That's not what I'm here to do. You know your tooling and you know your engineering practice better than I do or anyone else. However, everything fundamentally comes down to a repeatable unit. And I refer to those units fundamentally as pipelines. Now, as we grow, as engineers and organizations, we build opinions on how we write, build, and test and deploy that code, right? We build opinions on how we monitor our applications and our database paradigms and compute layers. We build an ecosystem of opinions which is unique to you and your organization. And what I'm telling you right now is those opinions are very important, but fundamentally they need to translate into what I refer to as the golden path. Okay? So this golden path is that cognitive load being reduced on your developers. It's the way you go from code to production. This includes all of the testing pipelines. This includes all of the checks and balances which are required to propel that change and get into your prod environment. Whether it goes in a dev, stage, test, whatever, pre-prod, that golden path exists within each and every one of your organizations right now. It might be bumpy. Some of the folks who put their hands up and said, I'm nervous to deploy on a Friday, you still have a golden path. It's just not a fun path to go down, right? Your ability as an engineer to quickly see the results of your work will motivate you, will motivate people on your teams. So I want you to think about that golden path. I want you to think about what's in it right now, and fundamentally, what are the steps involved in automating it completely? This slide doesn't translate well on this small screen. However, here's an example of a golden path with 7 pillars. I'll read them out to you. First is, you commit code. You got a pipeline config. You go through your CI steps. You build a release. Maybe do some code analysis. You store those release artifacts, and then you go into your continuous delivery tooling. Finally, you find your way into production. So as platform engineers, as DevOps teams, fundamentally, something like this should already be in place within your organization. How you're able to automate it, again, it's up to you, but what this fundamentally distills down to is this. Can I commit code? Can I merge it? Does it pass the tests? Great. It should go into production. That's a loaded statement, right? I look around, I see a few like, okay, that's interesting. But this is fundamentally what your developers want. Your app developers don't care about databases. They don't care about load balancers. They don't care about application testing. They don't. They don't care it takes you too long. In fact, they don't like the fact that they push a change and it takes more than a day to go into production. In fact, I'd be willing to wager if a company came around and said, your ability to push your work into production directly to our users and our customers faster, they would consider that job opportunity over the one they have now, where that disconnect is there. There's a gap between what they do and what happens in your customer's eyes, right? But fundamentally, this is what it distills down to for your developers, the users of the platforms you build. Now, GitOps, or having everything stored as code, is another principle which supports this entire tool chain and this process. Fundamentally, the same method of building applications should apply to you building your golden path, right? Again, I'm not here to make recommendations about what tools you use. I'm just here to say that it should be, not just your application source code should be stored in Git, but all the configuration manifests, all the Helm charts, all the testing parameters, all the configurations for the environments themselves. These should all be committed to code. You should trust your tools, not your people. Trust your people, but trust the tools in the process more than the people. Fundamentally, that is the driving factor in your ability to build and maintain a golden path. So now I'm going to take a step back from the high level and go into a little bit more of a tactical suggestions for those of you who are in your cloud journeys at various stages. Some of the tools you can consider when it comes to using IAC, if you haven't already, is Terraform, Helm, and Packer. Fundamentally, these allow you to define your cloud infrastructure as code and the compute environments that contain it. Additionally, I'm sure everyone here uses some form of Git repo, whether it's GitLab, GitHub, whatever the case may be. And your app artifacts themselves, where they reside, and any additional configuration scripts, one time or anything that's repeatable, should all be considered as equally important artifacts in that app delivery process. And they should be labeled, cataloged, and maintained. Additionally, break down your monoliths into microservice-based architectures. The smaller the unit of compute the smaller the unit of service, the easier it's going to be to maintain that without having to affect potentially services which have nothing to do with what you're actually trying to fix and patch. The smaller and more primordial your application profile looks like, the higher its resiliency and its availability is going to be. Use Kubernetes. It's easy to say, but it's an orchestration platform which supports a lot of the GitOps paradigms I'm talking about up here. And fundamentally, expand your tool set. And what do I mean by that? Today, DevOps practitioners are using even more technologies now than they were last year. So what does that mean? For you, there are more tools available now on the market than there was before. And you and your colleagues are actually using them. They're actually getting utilized. There's more product categories opening them up. There's more capabilities and features being shipped in response to the fundamental pillars of keeping your applications and your users happy. So this is going to continue to grow. So ask yourself, what's your tool landscape looking like right now? What tools are you interested in? And make plans to go and explore and evaluate those. It's easy to put our heads down and get stuck in the day-to-day, but have time to go out and constantly evaluate what you're doing and how you're doing it, because the scale of evolution is shrinking. How you do your job today might not be the same 6 months or a year from now. And the final point I wanted to drive from the State of CD report is the teams that use those technologies do DevOps better. So their ability to map their practice to that elite category, that elite column of DevOps practitioners of being able to deploy on a Friday is contingent on them using these tools and putting them into practice. So teams who use more tools are better at DevOps. And I know that's easy for me to say, like I sell a tool too, and the other vendors in the room probably like that, but this is the truth. And I encourage you, these two slides come from the State of CD report in 2022. So if you're interested in learning more about this, definitely look that report up, completely free, you can Google it. And fundamentally, thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I appreciate it.